Saw dudes, Sevagoth Prime's Access just released, and along with it came his signature weapon, Epitaph Prime, and Sentinel, Nautilus Prime. Today's video will cover Epitaph Prime, which is quickly becoming one of my personal favorite weapons. The base Epitaph was already an insanely good weapon for its utility and damage potential, but Epitaph Prime is a whole different beast. It'll be hard to take it off my wrist. Let's get started. We're going to start with a stat comparison between the two weapons to establish a baseline. The Epitaph Prime has great accuracy in both fire modes. The ammo economy generally is very good, despite the ammo maximum of 40 thanks to its high damage and utility. The ammo pickup of 20 makes sustaining ammo pools a bit easier. The main difference is the fire rate increase on the Prime, which sits at 1.75 attacks per second as opposed to 1.5 on the base version. The noise level on both weapons is listed as alarming, with a mag size of 1 and a projectile flight speed of 200 meters per second on the charged shot and 50 meters per second on the uncharged shot. The uncharged shot on the Prime, compared to the base version of the Epitaph, has slightly higher crit chance and crit damage, though the base damage remains unchanged. The status chance still sits at 50%, which is somewhat disappointing, but the base numbers were already insane. It still retains the forced impact proc on direct hit. The uncharged AoE is a bit different. If you didn't already know, the direct hit and AoE portion of the uncharged shot apply status separately on targets. The status chance for the AoE still sits at 50% and the force proc is still cold, but the AoE size went up from 8 meters to 10 meters and 20 blast damage to 30 blast damage. The damage buff is a 50% upgrade, but that isn't the star. The extra blast radius is amazing for priming and general utility. Now let's cover the BFG mode or the charged shot. Epitaph Prime has a 15-point increase in total damage over the base weapon. The charge time remains the same at 0.4 seconds. The crit stats got a pretty nice buff though. The 48% crit chance on the base version is subbed out for 50% on the Prime. The biggest buff is the crit damage, which sits at a massive 3 times as opposed to 2.6 times on the base version. The punch through remains the same at 2 meters. The status chance got a pretty nice buff and sits at 14%, though this won't affect gameplay much. At most, it will allow for more slash proc applications. We're still looking at a forced impact proc for hemorrhage usage. Okay, let's cover the builds. There are two main variants, the Impaler and Primer. The Impaler is the one we will start with and the DPS variant. This build focuses on using the charge shot to decimate a single enemy and can kill via upfront damage or bleed over time. I highly suggest using a Primer, either from your weapons or a companion. The base build will have Galvanized Diffusion and Galvanized Shot. The multi-shot is mandatory for added damage and status application. Galvanized Shot is multiplicative on Epitaph Prime, meaning it is a final damage multiplier. Creeping Bullseye is our preferred crit mod since it lowers our fire rate. There's going to be more on that later. We buff our insane crit damage with Prime Target Cracker for an insane 6.3 times multiplier. Then we have Hemorrhage, which allows our impact procs to have a 35% chance to apply a slash status effect. This bonus is doubled while our fire rate sits below 2.5. Lethal Torrent increases our fire rate, and Multi-Shot increasing our damage output. Now back to Creeping Bullseye. If we had used Prime Pistol Gambit, our fire rate would exceed the 2.5 threshold, meaning we only have a 35% chance to proc slash instead of 70%. With this current setup, we have a 2.45 fire rate, which is perfect for ease of use and slash damage application. To round out the foundation, we have Pistol Elementalist, which increases our slash damage, essentially acting as a universal Bane mod. However, the damage increase from this mod is final multiplicative, meaning it applies after faction damage multipliers, such as Roar. The final mod slot is up to you. As usual, Bane mods will make the most sense if you're trying to squeeze out the most slash damage possible. However, if you just want to kill things with headshots, Galvanized Crosshairs works well too. Keep in mind that the mod requires you to hit headshots as a proc, and headshot kills to progress the buff potency. You may need to employ some form of armor strip to keep the headshot damage relevant in endurance content. If you just want more crit damage and can outsource the crit chance, consider using sharpened bullets. The extra crit damage can go a long way in scaling the bleed procs further and just requires basic kills rather than headshot kills. Now we have the classic Primer build. This is meant to be used with a melee weapon that is using Condition Overload or a weapon with Gun CO. Barrel Diffusion and Sure Shot make the base of the build. We do not use the galvanized versions of these mods because this weapon will not be scoring kills, so the bonuses will not surpass the stats of the base mod. Accelerated Isotope adds radiation damage to the mix and increases fire rate. Frostbite, Pistol Pestilence, and Jolt are all 60/60 mods that create a viral electric mix for additional status effects and status chance. If you want a different combination, mess around with the order or swap for other 60/60s. Finally, we have Augur Seeker and Prime Fulmination. Augur Seeker increases the status duration of applied procs, making it easier to take advantage of Gun CO on other weapons. It also increases the crowd control capabilities of Epitaph Prime thanks to the force cold procs on the AoE portion of damage. Prime Fulmination increases the AoE range from 10 meters to 14.4 meters, making priming a ton easier. However, this does make it more likely to stagger your Warframe, so consider using Prime Sure-Footed if you have it. Now let's cover the Arcanes. The best arcane options for Epitaph Prime are fairly flexible, and it will change depending on your use case. The best options are Secondary Deadhead, Dexterity, Encumber, Merciless, and Shiver. Secondary Deadhead is meant for tapping heads. Because Epitaph Prime has so much base damage and receives a multiplicative bonus from Gun CO, Secondary Deadhead is a decent option. The passive headshot damage is nice, especially if you are using the weapon with Sevagoth Prime. After a certain point though, headshot damage will not kill outright, and slash procs will take over. If you are planning on priming with the Epitaph Prime for your melee weapon, you might like Secondary Dexterity. The extra combo duration provided by the Arcane can make your experience a lot better and free up some mod space on your chosen melee weapon. I highly suggest using a melee weapon with Condition Overload with this Arcane, since the AoE blast and direct hit can apply up to 6 different status effects on multiple shots. Secondary Encumber is the classic primer Arcane. The random status effects are great for priming and can set up Condition Overload or primary Gun CO. With the AoE buff from the prime version of the weapon, priming is a lot easier to execute and take advantage of. If you have an external damage buff such as Roar and want to take advantage of the multiplicative damage from Gun CO, you can use this Arcane on the damage build for some extra utility. Secondary Merciless is the safe option, especially if you are planning to kill via slash procs from Hemorrhage. It just requires kills to proc, unlike Deadhead, which requires headshot kills to proc. I realize that the reload speed buff doesn't affect Epitaph due to its auto-loading after a shot, but the Arcane as a whole is a good option. Secondary Shiver is the final option and is pretty niche. Think of this Arcane as the cold variant of Cascadia Flare. The good news about this Arcane is that it does not require kills to proc, only the application of cold on an enemy. However, that's just about where the good stuff ends. It's an alright option, but the wording of the Arcane is somewhat misleading. So what is the verdict on Epitaph Prime? I love it, but I realize it won't be for everybody. This weapon can do 2 things at once, which I love, but the way it does so is quite different. For one, it's an AoE weapon that has low AoE damage, but exceedingly high single target damage. The AoE serves as a crowd control tool more than anything, and allows the weapon to self-prime, even with the Impaler build. The charge time might annoy some folks, and it takes some getting used to. However, the slight fire rate buff in the Prime makes it easier to pull off big damage on priority targets quicker. I think the biggest buff all around is the buff to the AoE radius. The priming capabilities of this gun is insane, and the utility even on the damage-oriented build is quite nice. That being said, it is competing against some powerhouses, such as the Kuva Nucor and 10x Cycron. Kuva Nucor has innate radiation, and comes with a progenitor bonus, and procs the microwave effect, something that the Epitaph cannot do. It also possesses great single target and AoE damage, thanks to a status chance and critical multiplier and chaining beam without the finicky nature of a charge trigger. The Epitaph Prime is a great gun though, and something I would advise picking up. Even if it isn't your cup of tea, with the buffs to cold status, it could make your other weapon shine even more. I wouldn't be surprised if you start picking it up later for synergies within your loadout. And with that, we come to the end of the video. I hope this weapon review and build was helpful. If you have any questions or thoughts, please leave them in the comments. I also wanted to announce that we are really close to 6,000 subscribers. Thank you for your continued support, it means the world to me. On another note, a Sevagoth Prime build is coming out soon, and will be in a similar fashion to my Volt Prime build with all variants, including Shadow and his claws. Due to the intricate nature of the frame, it may take longer to come out since I do not want to miss anything, and I want to make it thorough. I once again thank you all for the support and kind words. Okay, enough yapping, let me know what you guys think. As always, thank you for watching and happy farming. Stay safe.